how I felt called to Costa Rica. I came down on that first week experience, and as I was leaving, I was trying to encourage the gentleman that owned the team house, and I just told him, you're sitting on a ministry gold mine. I was like, this culture is going to impact a lot of people that want to come down and serve Jesus, that want to come down and live out their faith in a tangible way. As I was leaving, I just told him that. He said, well, I'm 72. I don't know what I'm doing. You should come down and do it. And I laughed it off. Like most of the time I would laugh, God wasn't laughing. So I went home and I told my wife what an awesome experience we had that week, and just that he invited me to come down and do something. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. I tried to put it in the back of my mind, just drive on with being a youth pastor and coaching football, and I love my job, I love my students, but I just knew like there was just something about it that I couldn't shake. So I came back down on 2 more exploratory trips. And on the 3rd trip down, a good friend of mine who helped me start the ministry, a gentleman named Duke Hammond, he told me, hey, we're going to go pick up this girl in this neighborhood and take her to church. And I thought, well, that's a thing that missionaries do, so I was all about it. She came out of the house and she greeted me with the Tico kiss, which you just kiss their cheek and kiss the air, kind of, just a greeting they do here. She started to walk off and we were following her, and Duke, being a kind of a cut-up, he said, I'm going to tell Molly, who's my wife, I'm going to tell your wife you're down here kissing prostitutes. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't know, I had never met a prostitute in my life. So we walked to church, and this young lady ends up giving her life to Christ. And I was just so like, wow, this is crazy. And we were walking back through the center of town, and we decided to stop, and there was all kinds of food trucks. So we stopped and we thought, well, we'll buy this young lady lunch. So we got her some lunch out of one of the food trucks, and we sat down with this young woman who was a prostitute who just gave her life to Christ. And not 5 minutes after that, the mayor of Alajuelita walks up, and he sits down with us and he starts thanking us for all the wheelchair ramps we had built in the city, because it was not wheelchair accessible 20 years ago. So people that were in wheelchairs just didn't get to go a lot of places. So we started talking to the mayor. And then Luis wheeled up. Luis was a handicapped gentleman that we were helping. We built him a wheelchair ramp to get into his house. He was big stature for a Tico, and his wife was a tiny Tico lady, and she'd literally drag him up the steps in the rain to get him into the house. But because of that, he was mostly homebound. He didn't get to go out of the house a whole lot. So Luis wheeled up, and he was thanking us. I mean, now he's out and about town in his chair, and it was so fun to see. And he thanked us for building the wheelchair ramp. Then a homeless gentleman came up, which we have plenty of those here in Alajuelita. I wasn't really eating my food truck food, and he asked if I was going to eat it, and I handed it to him thinking he was going to take it and walk off, but he sat down. And at that moment, it was like God just took a spiritual 2x4 and hit me over the back of the head. And he's like, when are you ever going to be eating lunch with a prostitute, a politician, a cripple, and a beggar? This is the gospel. This is where I want you to be. And from that moment was kind of like an epiphany. I knew that God was calling us to Costa Rica to do something. Sometimes knowing what you're not is way more valuable than knowing what you're trying to become. And what I knew we weren't going to do was give the mission experience where they sleep on the floor in a sleeping bag and eat cold cereal and PB&J and bathe out of a bucket, and just kind of, people think, well, missions, you should have to suffer like a missionary. And most missionaries don't suffer in that way anymore. I mean, there's people that are called to remote places that suffer physically, but in this day and age in Costa Rica, it was unnecessary. We're going to give everybody a comfortable bed. We're going to give everybody 3 hot meals a day, because I don't want them to be distracted physically and worn down physically. I want them to be worn out emotionally and spiritually. So there was a lot of things I knew we weren't going to do. I wasn't going to charge exorbitant fees. I wanted to get as many people to the mission field as possible. Our very first mission trip was $75 a week. It cost us money to host mission teams, but I knew if people came and got the vision and saw the gospel come to life, they would get behind the ministry. So we lost all kinds of money, but I knew that it would pay dividends later. I'm a planner, so I set 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals. And I thought, well, if we do 3 or 4 teams the first year and then build it up from there, and by year 5, we might be doing 15 or 20 teams a year. And that would be a huge success. The first year we did like 18 mission teams, mainly from my network of people just saying, hey, I want to see what God is doing in Costa Rica, because I was sending updates. Back then it was before social media really. So it was just text, and I'd tell people, you're not going to believe what happened today. You're not going to believe what God did today. And they started bringing their youth groups, and that's really how it started. The price point was right, the conditions were right, and making the gospel the focus of ministry, making Jesus Christ-centric in everything we do, it was just so important to who we were going to be. I wanted people to live out the gospel in a tangible way, and that meant they needed to be well-rested, they needed to be healthy, and they needed to be physically not comfortable. We have a mantra here, 50% comfortable, 100% safe. And I wanted them to feel safe physically, like they weren't going to be harmed or robbed or anything like that. But I wanted them to be uncomfortable about the relationships and the ministry that was taking place. I wanted them laying awake every night thinking about what God had done that day and how it impacted their faith walk. What came next in the process of moving down here was I made a bunch of deals with God. You know how you throw your fleece out? Told him I didn't want to be a fundraiser. So Molly and I sent out one newsletter, and we raised like 95% of our support just right off the bat. So that was a huge confirmation, but also terrifying, because it was like, okay, this is getting real. My church was great, just full of grace, and wanted to send us well. So they agreed to pay my salary for that year while I raised support, and we transitioned down. And as we were transitioning down, we sold everything. It was like the purge. It was so healthy. We got rid of everything and came down, and I think it was Molly and the 4 kids. My daughter was 13 and my kids were 9, 7, and 5. So we moved down in like 14 suitcases to Costa Rica. My wife had never even been here. So she showed up in the mission field, never having explored any of it before. And it was just a series of God just confirming this is what he wanted us to do. We didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know what it was going to look like. We didn't know anything. We were just trying to take that small step of obedience and just take that next step. He gave me a good set, and I was looking for a wave to ride. And I was like, okay, let's paddle in and see what happens.